When the disciples saw the blind man begging, they treated him as a topic for conversation and inquiry. His blindness was the focus of their attention, not the fact that he was a suffering person. So they asked Jesus about the reason for his blindness, because people of that time believed that a physical infirmity was a result of sin, committed either by the person or by his parents. Well, the disciples were in for a big surprise. They could never have imagined that the afflicted man would play such a major part in revealing God's wonderful works on our behalf. But are we so far removed from the thinking that a person is to blame for the misfortune that they bear? In our enlightened world, don't some people still think that poverty and its resulting maladies like sickness and short lifespan are the fault of the poor? Aren't those physically or sexually abused sometimes blamed for what they provoked in others? As long as people think this way, they won't look deeper into the economic or cultural or political reasons that keep poor people poor and whole nations in a permanent underclass. Some attitudes about poverty's sources also prevent people from doing something to change oppressive conditions for groups of people in our own community and for whole nations in other parts of the world. Well, here, Jesus casts light on that darkness. And he answers their question by neither he nor his parents sinned. So the blame lies elsewhere. Maybe even on the very people who are blaming others for those dire conditions. God is not punishing the man for sin. Instead, we heard that God wants to do something that will deliver the man from his blindness. And so after enlightening the disciples, Jesus sets out about changing that man's conditions. So you see, he cures two forms of blindness. He enables both the man to see, and he enables his disciples to get a different perspective. Jesus doesn't just see one person who is ill. He sees another example of the human condition which he has come to alleviate. The blind man is a symbol. Blindness is a universal ailment that affects all of humanity. We can be blind to God's presence in our lives. We can be blind to the needs of our neighbors. We can be blind to people of other races, religions, and nationalities. And in our blindness, we sometimes would rather build a wall of separation and construct social barriers than welcome the stranger into our midst and address the needs of the poor. Jesus gives the man born blind his physical sight. But that is just the first step on that man's journey to spiritual sight. In the confrontation that he later has with the Pharisees, that man will continue to progress from his newly acquired physical sight to a marvelous spiritual sight. He tells us that he sees who Jesus is. That's how he comes to faith. And at the same time, the Pharisees progress even further into their blindness. They think they know it all, when in fact, they are not even aware that they don't know anything. They are totally in the dark. This is a very challenging gospel story. Is it possible that in the places that we think we see clearly, we're not? In that gospel, the ones who were sure that they knew what was going on, the Pharisees, were actually the blind ones. They were the religious experts, but they missed the truth that was staring them right in the face. The one who is confounding them and turning their world upside down was really God, trying desperately to open their eyes and set things right. And so, what is it that confounds us? What raises questions? What upsets our routines? These may be the very places in which God is trying to open our eyes and give us sight in order to set things right for us. The story of the blind man coming to sight gives us pause to ask ourselves, how well do I see? Do I see what is really going on in my life? Has the road that I have been traveling taken an unfamiliar turn, and maybe I lost the way? Are things happening to me that make me trip and stumble like a person who's walking and groping in the darkness? We know that the world is filled with glitter and bright lights, and sometimes that blinds us to what's really important, to what is lasting and what is best for us. And so maybe we should ask ourselves today, what is blurring my vision these days? What is dulling my appreciation for life? The blind man's story really replays our own, because we made the same journey that blind man did. We were led to a pool of water, washed there, and we had words poured over us. I baptize you. That began the journey, guided by the sight that we received in those waters. So what did we see as a result of being washed in that pool? Has the sight that we received in the washing affected our priorities and our life choices? Because our eyes have been opened, maybe we see the people of other races and nations, even those that some call enemies, are really our sisters and our brothers. Maybe we see that even in sickness and old age, there is great value and beauty. Maybe we see that God is not someone on high to fear, but someone who's up close and walks our life with us in wonderful companionship. And maybe we see that the people we value are not always the ones who are important. And maybe we see that having all we ever wanted can really leave us hungry and poor. Like the blind man, the waters should have opened our eyes. And now we see with the eyes of Jesus, who is the light in this very dark world.